Welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about the newest palette from Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and it is the Sugar and Spice palette, and I did receive this palette in PR, so thank you so much to Glaminatrix for sending this one over to me. I do have videos up with most of their previous palettes. They do create some really fun, beautiful, unique color stories, and this palette is launching August 5th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It will retail for 85 Australian or 57 USD. And this is Glaminatrix's first lab-made palette, so they have previously been hand-making their palettes. So this palette is made in the PRC, and what this means, they will be able to do less pre-orders and they will have more palettes available at every launch. And I do also want to point out that the pans in the palette are not 26mm. They're a little bit smaller than the pans which are in the ColourPop 30 pan palettes. And one of the first things I noticed when I opened the palette was that a lot of the shimmer pans, if not most of them, looked like they were half full. And I did reach out to the brand and they did say it's because of the pigment. There is 1 gram per pan, however, they have to be harder pressed in order to pass the drop test so they can be shipped internationally. Now, while I have heard of this and known for this before, I do also know brands who do just fill up the pans, because personally to me, if I was to buy a palette, I think it would just be disheartening to see these half full pans. But they did mention that they will be planning on fixing this. I don't think it will be for this launch, but for future launches. And the pans are removable and magnetic, and they do have the corresponding shade names on the back, but they're not quite as interchangeable since they are such a small pan size, but you can rearrange within the palette. So I'm going to be creating 2 looks, and then I'll be giving you some of my initial thoughts at the end of the video, so let's get right into it. Hopefully the sound is working, but I've been having trouble with getting my microphone to charge. So I'm just priming with the Sigma eyeshadow primer. Taking Mint onto my inner half of my crease. I'm just going to stamp it a little bit. These are pastels, so obviously they're going to be very light. But that is building up very nicely. And then taking Gumdrop onto the outer half. Just kind of same thing, and I am just using swirling motions to blend that outwards and just taking it out here. Then I'm taking Sticky Date and I'm gonna put that right onto the lid just a little bit, and I'm kind of blending it up into the mint, but very gently, just really tapping on it. I'm just gonna put on a little bit more here. Essentially going to be creating a halo eye. I'm gonna wipe off my brush and go back in with Mint and just bring a little bit more of that back. And then again, going in with Sticky Date on this T63 brush from Makeup Shack. And that's gonna go into my outer corner. Just a little bit more. I feel like this is not coming off as dark as I thought it was going to be, but that's fine. And then I'm going back in with Gumdrop into the edges. I feel like I'm having a little bit of patchiness happening here. Alright, so I'm going to bring this underneath my lower lash line as well. And then I'm also going to go in with Gumdrop on the edge of that and just blend it in. And then feather out the outer corners here. Putting down some Fair Name Pixie Epoxy. I'm just going to tap it out, and I'm only putting it in the center of my lid. Picked up Fennel. This shadow is just magical. So beautiful, and I'm going to pop that right in the center. I thought this would be an interesting one to kind of bridge all these shades together in the center. It's looking very gold, which is so interesting because it looks like it has a bit more teal in it. And I'm just going to bring it all the way up to my brow, just extra sparkle. And this one is a very, very smooth. And then I'm bringing Mint underneath my lower lash line. I feel like it's not applying as pigmented, probably because I don't have actual primer down there. So that is something to keep in mind. And I picked up Fennel and I missed my brush, and I'm just going to pop that right underneath the center of my lower lash line. So basically I'm just reflecting what I did on the top, on the bottom as well. And then I'm going to use the same brush, I just wiped it off, and I'm going into Vanilla for the beautiful inner corner. Such a beautiful shadow. For the lashes, I put on the Velour Lash in the style Cloud 9, and in the waterline I have the ColourPop Crybaby eye pencil, and here's the first finished look. Super shifty, love this shade. Going to be putting Brownie onto the outer corner for this second look. Oh, look at that depth. Look at that depth. Oh my. And I'm just going to kind of slowly work it inwards a little bit. And I'm going to take Brulee and blend the edges out with that. Personally, I could have gone without the two cream colored shadows, Meringue and Brulee. I don't feel like, for me personally, in the way I do makeup, those two will really make a difference. And also, it's not really like blending it outwards. It's kind of keeping it in the same spot, which is very interesting. Not necessarily a bad thing, I guess. Next, I'm going to take Taffy, actually, and I'm going to start blending it in. And it's kind of mixing a little bit weird out here with the brown, especially this yellow now. Which I thought the yellow would look pretty decent with the brown. I didn't really think much of it. I feel like from what I can tell so far, these mattes are thinner. They feel definitely different from their usual mattes. Picked up just a tiny bit of brownie on this fluffy brush, and I'm just going to try to slowly bring this out a little bit. There we go. But I just feel like I'm being a little bit careful because I just feel like these are not performing the way I'm used to. But that's a really nice blend. And I'm also going to take brownie just a little bit underneath my lower lash line, like the tiniest bit. The tiniest bit. I'm getting a little bit of fallout as well, which I think is pretty usual. And I'm going to take Taffy and place it on the outer edge of that. And this yellow is very, very, very much a very soft yellow. Like, as pastel as it gets. I think if you really wanted this yellow to pop, you would need to use a white base. Putting down some Fairly Pixie epoxy and just tapping it out. And I picked up Basil. The shadow looks so... Oh, yes. Beautiful. Oh, my goodness. That is exactly what I was imagining. And then I'm going to take a little bit of lavender and pop that onto the inner portion. Ooh, the shadow is also really beautiful. I believe these two are duochromes. I think only the multichromes are only in the top row. And then just blending that into that. Oh, that is so pretty. That is so beautiful. And then I'm taking Nutmeg underneath my lower lash line, and I misted my brush just to help prevent any fallout or too much fallout. That is a really beautiful shade. That one reminds me of the formula from their Nearly Natural palette. Put on the Cloud 9 lash from Velour Lashes. And here's the second finished look. So let's talk about some of my initial thoughts on the palette. I do feel like I need to use it a couple more times, so I will leave a pinned comment with kind of my final thoughts on the palette after I've used it a couple of times. But I just feel like right now the mattes do feel different, and I do want to just test them out further, try a couple of different eyeshadow primers, techniques to confirm whether or not these are truly feeling different, which it could definitely be from the fact that these are now made in a lab versus handmade. I have already talked about the concerns I had about the amount of shadow that is per pan, and it seems they will be resolving that, so I'm happy to hear. The shimmers feel absolutely exquisite, beautiful, just so shiny and really, really metallic. There's a couple of different textures going on here, so specifically you can already tell that mustard is the flakiest, and then the rest of these are quite smooth, with basil, fennel, vanilla, and lavender being the most topper-like, while Star Anise is definitely like a black base kind of multi-chrome. Nutmeg is also very, very smooth, but it feels a little bit on the thicker side, very reminiscent again of their Nearly Natural palette. So the shimmers in here get an A++ from me. So now let's talk about the mattes. The three pastels down here on the bottom are very, very, very sheer. I have to try that on a different eyeshadow primer to see if it was just the eyeshadow primer, if there's a specific way to work with them, but they are very sheer and they are harder to build up, which makes me concerned for people with different skin tones. Also, while I do understand the color story, I think that this is supposed to be a neutral leaning palette that has some fun pops between the pastel mattes as well as the pops of shimmers. Personally, to me, I feel like I have a little bit of a harder time visualizing looks I would create because of some of these tones in here, especially Sticky Date. shade, it's just so cool toned that it's really going to muddy up if you use it in conjunction to the more pastel shades. And I just feel like some of these brighter shimmer shadows don't really go with them either. And I did already mention my thoughts on these two cream-like shadows. Again, these are very light. I don't think we needed both of them. And I would be interested to see how these work on different skin tones from medium to deep. The matte formula definitely feels different for me, not just only the pastels, but these two shades I used as well. They're just very thin, and they are a little bit more prone to not layering too well. So I do feel like I had to be a little bit extra careful to make sure that I was blending these correctly together. And I feel like they weren't as effortless as some of the mattes from Glaminatrix other palettes, and using those together, I didn't really feel like I was afraid of messing it up. But keep in mind that there are some shadows that of course I didn't dip into, such as Licorice, Meringue, and Mustard, and Star Anise, so I will make sure to make a point to use those off camera. For me, this is not my favorite color story from them. I love their other 10-pan palettes, color stories in those such as Into the Night, Glamorous, and Nocturnal, as well as the Nearly Natural palette. I think those for me are just creme de la creme from Glaminatrix Cosmetics. So let me know in the comments below if you plan on picking this palette up. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.